On the morning of February 4, 2002, back-office staff at Allfirst Financial's treasury operation in Baltimore attempted to confirm a batch of foreign currency options. They called the brokers listed as counterparties on the tickets. The brokers had never traded them. By the time the trader named on those tickets failed to appear at his desk, the reconciliation had exposed a hole that the parent bank in Dublin had not been watching. The confirmations for the hedging trades did not exist because the trades did not exist. The question this episode answers is not why a trader lied. It is how a control structure could carry a fictional portfolio on its books in balance for approximately 5 years. The instrument at the center of this case is the foreign exchange option, and more precisely the accounting relationship between an option and the position it is supposed to hedge. An FX option is a contract granting the right, but not the obligation, to buy or sell a currency at a set rate on a future date. In a legitimate proprietary trading book, options serve two functions. They can be directional bets. They can also be hedges, offsetting the risk of a spot or forward position the trader already holds. When a trader takes a large directional position in the spot market, a corresponding option position is what tells the risk managers that the exposure is contained. This matters structurally for one reason. A hedge reduces reported risk. If a trader holds a large bet on the Japanese yen and the book also shows offsetting option positions, then the net exposure the risk desk measures is small. The value at risk figure stays inside its limit. The trading limits are respected. The position looks controlled because on paper the hedges neutralize it. According to the account established by the independent investigation commissioned by Allied Irish banks and conducted by Eugene Ludwig, the former US comptroller of the currency, John Rusnak was authorized to run a proprietary trading book in currencies at Allfirst, the Baltimore-based subsidiary that AIB had acquired. The strategy the record describes was a directional one. Rusnak was making large bets, principally that the yen would strengthen against the dollar. Through the late 1990s, the yen moved against him. Here is the baseline the fraud distorted. A trader is permitted to hold large gross positions provided they are hedged, because the hedges bring net risk down to authorized levels. The entire control architecture at Allfirst depended on one assumption: that the hedging trades recorded in the system were real, and that their confirmations could be verified against the counterparties named. The fraud lived inside that assumption. If the hedges were fictional, the reported net risk was fictional, and the reported net risk was the only number the risk managers actually watched. Now, the architecture. The Ludwig report and the subsequent enforcement record describe a structure built in layers, each layer defeating a specific control. Step 1. The losses. Rusnak's directional yen positions lost money. Rather than close them and report the loss, the record establishes that he held them and expanded them, increasing the size of the bet in the expectation that the market would reverse. The losses grew into the hundreds of millions and continued past $1 billion. Step 2. Concealing the losses required concealing the positions that generated them. A large real position produces margin calls, funding requirements, and mark-to-market entries that risk managers see. So the losing positions had to be masked. The mechanism was the fictitious hedge. The record describes Rusnak entering into the trading system pairs of offsetting FX options. In each pair, one option was a deep in-the-money option that Allfirst supposedly sold, generating a large premium receivable, and the other was an option Allfirst supposedly bought, generating an equal payable. The two options were structured to have offsetting cash flows and offsetting valuations. Step 3. The accounting effect of the pair. A deep in-the-money option sold for a large premium creates the appearance that cash or a receivable is owed to the bank. On the books, this fictitious asset offset the very real trading losses. The pair was constructed so that its net economic value was near zero, which meant the risk system saw a hedge that neutralized exposure, while the general ledger saw an asset that filled the hole left by the losses. One fictional entry served two purposes. It suppressed the reported risk, and it papered over the loss. Step 4. The confirmation problem. Every real trade with a counterparty generates a confirmation. The back office is supposed to match each ticket against a document from the other side of the trade. A fictitious option has no counterparty and therefore no confirmation. This is the point at which the fraud should have been caught on day one. The record establishes how it was not. The options in each pair were structured with matching but opposite terms. And critically, one of the two options was written to expire on the same day it was booked, or with terms that generated no net settlement. The Ludwig report describes Rusnak persuading the back office that these particular trades did not require confirmation on the argument that the paired options offset one another and settled to zero, so no cash actually changed hands and no confirmation was necessary. The back office accepted this. The control that verifies whether a trade is real was waived on the trader's representation. That verification was pointless. Step 5. The false documents. Where confirmations were nonetheless requested, the record establishes that Rusnak produced them himself. Using a home computer, he generated fictitious confirmation documents bearing the letterhead and details of Asian brokerage counterparties. Time to arrive when the Baltimore office was open and the actual overseas brokers were closed. The back office matched tickets against documents the trader had fabricated. Step 6. The funding. A $1 billion loss is not only an accounting problem, it is a cash problem. To carry the real losing positions, Rusnak needed real funding, and the record describes him raising it by selling deep-in-the-money options for genuine cash premiums to actual counterparties, prime brokers among them. These were real trades generating real cash inflows that funded the ongoing losses, and they created real liabilities. To disguise those liabilities, they too were absorbed into the netting structure of the phantom book. Step 7. The manipulated risk report. Allfirst measured Rusnak's risk using a value-at-risk model that drew its inputs from a rates and prices file. The record establishes that Rusnak was able to influence the data feeding this calculation, holding the reported VAR artificially low. When his positions grew, the VAR figure did not grow with them, because the numbers behind the figure were being shaped to keep it small. If you draw the organization chart from this, the structure is clear. At the center, a proprietary book with enormous real losses. Wrapped around it, a shell of fictitious paired options that netted the losses to zero and the risk to nothing. Around that, a back office that had agreed such trades needed no confirmation, and a VAR system fed inputs that hid the size of the book. And above all of it, a parent bank in Dublin, whose oversight of the Baltimore subsidiary the record describes as remote. Why did the gatekeepers miss it? And for years. The verification chain failed at more than one link, and each failure was structural rather than accidental. The first link was the back office. Its function is trade confirmation, the single control that distinguishes a real position from an invented one. The record establishes that this control was defeated by a policy exception. The premise that offsetting zero settlement option pairs did not require confirmation removed exactly the trades that needed confirming most. A control that can be waived on the representation of the person it is meant to check is not a control. It is a courtesy. The second link was risk management. The VAR figure was the summary statistic that told supervisors whether Rusnak was within limits. Because he could influence the inputs, the outputs stayed benign. Supervisors who trusted the number had no independent read on the size of the book. The record notes that the sheer volume of Rusnak's trading and the balance sheet funding it consumed were signals available to be examined. The gross funding requirement of the Treasury operation had grown substantially. A large proprietary currency book at a mid-sized regional bank generating that scale of balance sheet usage was itself an anomaly that went unexamined. The third link was the internal audit and supervisory structure spanning Baltimore and Dublin. The Ludwig report is direct on this point. Allfirst was a subsidiary of AIB, and the trading operation was small relative to the parent's total activity. The record describes a supervisory posture in which the Baltimore Treasury was treated as a minor unit, its controls under-resourced, its reporting lines to Dublin thin. When a control environment is under-resourced, the anomalies that appear do not travel up the chain with enough force to prompt investigation. The fourth link involves the external verification available through the bank's counterparties and its cash flows. Real cash was moving. Rusnak was selling real options to real brokers for real premiums to fund the losses. Those transactions left footprints in the bank's funding profile. For detection to occur earlier, someone would have had to ask a specific question. Why does a proprietary FX book of this stated risk require this magnitude of cash funding? The reported risk and the actual funding did not reconcile. The two numbers describe different books. No one placed them side by side. That is the structural condition for the fraud's longevity. Each control trusted the output of the control beside it. The back office trusted the trader's account of which trades needed confirming. Risk management trusted the VAR number. Supervisors trusted risk management. The parent trusted the subsidiary. Verification was never performed independently at the one point where the fiction was thinnest, the existence of the trades themselves. The unraveling began with the funding, not the fraud. The record establishes that a supervisor at Allfirst grew concerned about the scale of the balance sheet that Rusnak's trading was consuming and directed a reduction in his positions and an increase in scrutiny. The increased scrutiny turned toward the trades themselves. In the days before February 4, 2002, back-office personnel began to insist on confirming the option positions that had previously been treated as exempt. The record describes them examining a set of options and finding that the counterparties named could not be reached, or when reached, had no record of the trades. The confirmations that did exist did not withstand contact with the named brokers. On February 4th, when staff attempted to reach the Asian brokerages listed on a batch of options, they reached firms that had never transacted them. The documents on file did not match anything real. Rusnak did not come to work. The reconciliation that morning surfaced the gap. A large block of the portfolio's hedging positions had no counterparty on the other side because there was no other side. AIB disclosed the matter publicly. The bank announced that it had uncovered a fraud in its Allfirst treasury operation and quantified the loss at approximately $691 million. The Ludwig investigation was commissioned and its report set out the mechanism. The enforcement record followed. Rusnak was charged federally. According to the record of that proceeding, he entered a guilty plea to 1 count of bank fraud. The charging documents and the plea established that he had concealed trading losses over a period of approximately 5 years by fabricating options trades and false confirmation records, and that the concealed losses totaled in the range of $691 million. The larger figure associated with this case, the notional scale of the phantom positions that passed through the book, ran into the billions. He was sentenced to a term of imprisonment and ordered to make restitution. The collapse was immediate once the confirmation control was actually applied. The entire structure depended on the back office not calling the counterparties. The moment someone called, the phantom book had nothing behind it. A fraud that stood for 5 years failed in a single morning because its foundation was a single control that had been switched off. What this case establishes is narrow and precise. The strength of a trading control environment is not the sophistication of its risk models. It is the independence of trade confirmation. A value at risk figure, however refined, is only as reliable as the assumption that the positions feeding it are real. When the person generating the positions can also shape the inputs that measure them and can persuade the back office that certain trades need not be verified, the measurement collapses into the thing it is meant to check. The Allfirst matter demonstrated that a fictitious hedge is more dangerous than an unhedged loss because the fiction suppresses the very signal that would prompt intervention. A real loss generates alarms. A phantom hedge silences them. In the aftermath, AIB sold Allfirst and restructured its US operations. The case entered the supervisory literature as a standing example of the confirmation control's primacy, cited alongside earlier rogue trading failures where a single individual controlled both the front office position and the back office verification of it. The finding is not that a trader was dishonest. The finding is that a control which can be waived by the person it monitors is not a control at all. The portfolio that hid $6.5 billion in notional exposure existed only because no one, for 5 years, picked up the phone.